In this video, we're going to look at the top 5 most common questions that are asked in interviews of waiters and waitresses, and we're going to plan fantastic answers that are going to help you get that job. So let's start with a question that every single restaurant in the world always asks, which is what times can you work? And they are extremely interested in knowing the answer to this, and if you don't do it well, you are not going to get the job. So there's a simple 3-step process that I teach people to use that is really successful in answering this question. So 3 things you're going to do. First is you're going to show that you're honest. There is absolutely no point saying you can work times when in fact you can't work those times, because if you get a job offer on the basis of those times and then change your mind, they're just going to get rid of you. The second thing you're going to do is show that you are flexible. Restaurants need people that have flexibility, and they want people that can do a range of times and can be there when they need people. The last thing you're going to make sure is that you are showing that you're committed. This question is a great way for restaurants to gauge people's commitment to the job. So if you immediately go in and start talking about all the times that you can't work, that is indicative of someone that isn't really committed to the job and you don't want to employ. So by showing that you can work lots and lots of different times and not talking about anything as a barrier to working, you're going to show a commitment to the job, and a reliability is also implied. There are certain things that are really great to mention. So they would love you to mention that you can work in evenings, because some people would prefer not to work evenings, but restaurants are open in the evening, of course. Weekends, if you can work weekends, that's really great. That's a busy time for restaurants, and also people would rather work during the week, but weekends are a really big thing in the restaurant industry. You can talk about managing other commitments. So instead of talking about I have this commitment, it means I can never work a Thursday. Talk about how you can manage your commitments, you can move things around, and you can be there when they need you. If you can work the school holidays, that's an amazing thing to mention, and it gets people's attention. However, if you can't work school holidays, the trick is just don't mention it. It's probably not going to come up. The key is to talk about the times that you can do and just not bothering about the times you can't do. Should they ask you about a time that you're going to really struggle to do, it's much better to say the phrase at the bottom. So talk about prefer to work these times, but I can be flexible, and show some flexibility. So think about what's the maximum that you could really offer. So if there is something that is stopping you working, say a Thursday afternoon that they're interested in, could you work alternate Thursdays? Could you move that thing on a Thursday to a Wednesday, for example, so that you're free for that time? So you're going to really try to say yes to everything, because the key to success is what it says on the bottom. Focus on what you can do. Don't even mention what you can't do. The chances are that by the time you've got to the times that you can't do, they've moved on to the next question, and they will never find out about all the times that you can't do. So just keep saying all the times you can do, and you should be as successful as possible on this question. So let's move on and look at question 2, which is usually done terribly, and I'm going to show you the trick to be successful on this. So a customer asks a question about the menu and you don't know the answer. What do you do? Immediately when you read that question, you're thinking about asking, you're thinking about going to the kitchen, you're thinking about finding out. That is what I would consider to be a bad answer, and I'm going to show you why. So anything around, I would ask, implies that you don't know the menu. Call someone over, that's a terrible answer, and you cringe when you hear it, because you just imagine if you called over the manager and the manager didn't know the answer, then the whole restaurant just looks incompetent. So you never want to put someone else on the spot in case they also didn't know the answer. And if you answer the question in such a way that shows you're not really bothered about having a gap in your knowledge about the menu, that doesn't reflect very well. So hopefully I've busted the idea of talking about asking and immediately going to that, because that's not a very impressive answer. I'm going to show you what an impressive answer actually looks like, and hopefully you'll appreciate why this is so much better. So the first thing you're going to immediately say when you hear this question is, actually, I'm going to know the menu. I'm a professional, and I study menus. I make sure that I have a really, really good knowledge and understanding of the whole menu. I would not want to be a waiter or a waitress on the floor without a very good knowledge and thorough knowledge of the menu. You're also going to talk about how you ask questions before the customers do. So when you first see the menu, you're going to look through it and go, I don't know what that word means. I've never heard that. I'm going to find that out and ask the chef, or I'm going to look it up so I know what the answer is. You're also going to think about what questions are customers likely to ask about the menu, and you're going to ask those questions long before any customer ever asks you that. And if you've got good culinary knowledge, or you've got some previous experience in the industry as a waiter or waitress, you can just bring that in and say, I've worked in this industry for a very long time. I've heard most questions that customers ask, and I'm confident in dealing with those. So you're immediately almost batting away the question by saying, actually, this doesn't happen very much. I know the menu very well. I've preempted the questions and I've got lots of experience. So it is exceedingly rare that I don't know the answer. So that you're actually answering the question, you can sort of say at the very end that in the event that a customer asks an extremely specialist question, I'm going to say that I'm very interested in the answer, and you're going to go and find that answer. So you're going to say to the customer something like, that's a really interesting question. I'd love to find that out for you. Then you're going to ask, and then you're going to come back with a really good answer. So if you stick to the positive arrow and you ignore everything on the negative arrow, you're going to stand out and you're going to impress people, because almost everyone that answers this question immediately goes down the line of asking and shows that they don't really care about not knowing the menu, and they don't emphasize the professionalism. So stick to that and you'll be successful in this question. Another question that comes up that's similar is, what would you do if a customer complained about the food? And as a waiter or waitress, you are going to experience customers complaining about food. And there is a simple procedure that you can follow that successfully answers the question. So the first thing you're going to do in the interview is you're going to say that you take customer complaints seriously. When a customer makes a complaint, I show that I'm actively listening, that I'm really interested in what the customer has to say, and I'm taking their complaint seriously. Then, as appropriate, you're going to apologize when something has went wrong, and you're going to do it sincerely and openly. You're then going to go through a process of gathering and assessing. So you're gathering information about the complaint. You're making sure that you understand exactly what the problem is and what's caused it. You're then going to assess to see what the customer really is looking for. Do they want the meal sent back and a new meal brought? Are they looking for a refund? What are they actually interested in getting as a resolution? Then you're going to be looking at finding a solution. Do they want to speak to the manager? Do they need to have the food replaced? Does the policy allow for the customer to get a free meal or free desserts? So you're going to also talk about that you know the policy and you're going to find a solution within that policy. And then the last thing you can do to make you really stand out above other applicants is talk about learning from it. So you've just had a customer complaint. You're going to think about and reflect on what went wrong and what could we do better next time. And you're going to professionally collaborate with other people. You're not going to go to the kitchen and shout at the chef and say, how could dare you do that? And what, you've screwed this all up and made me really stressed out and I had to deal with that. No, that's the wrong way. You're going to professionally think about what did we do wrong as a restaurant and speak to the other people collaboratively and say, what if we did it this way? Then this complaint would never happen. What do you think about that? And then once you've made that point, it's not for you to actually set in place new policies, but just being part of the feedback system and the improvement process for that restaurant is a really good thing to mention. So talk about all these things on the list in order, and you will absolutely smash this question. So let's look at question 4. How would you deal with an angry or upset customer? And unfortunately, that is something that you will deal with in this industry. And I've got a simple 3-step process for answering this interview question. And so the first thing you're going to talk about is de-escalation. And make sure you use the word de-escalation. The word de-escalation used in this interview question immediately tells the interviewer that you know what you're talking about. So de-escalation is about calming the situation down and getting things under control. So some de-escalation techniques are talking quietly and calmly and actively listening to what the customer is saying. Often angry and upset customers just want someone to listen to them seriously. Then you're going to talk about showing genuine empathy. So you actually care about customer complaints. You care that a customer is angry. And so you've got some empathy for them for what's gone wrong. And then the last thing you do is that you're going to find a resolution within the policy. So you're going to know what the restaurant can offer and what discretion you have as a waiter or waitress to actively solve this problem. And you're not going to offer things that are not allowed within the policy. So get those 3 ideas: de-escalation, empathy, and finding a resolution, and mention that you're going to follow restaurant policies, and you will succeed on this question. So let's move on to the last question. Once I've made one point clear, which is that you definitely must stay calm and do not shout back. If you do that, it's all over. So my last question is, what experience do you have of selling alcohol? And you might have lots of experience, you might have no experience. But either way, you can actually come up with a decent answer. So the first step is showing knowledge. So you're going to know how to make key cocktails that are regularly asked for. So Bloody Mary, Long Island iced tea, and a martini. Just as a basic one, you can just list those three if that's the only three that you've learned, but make sure you learn the key ones. You're going to know the local laws. Is the drinking age 18? Is the drinking age 21? Are children allowed to drink? I mean, say 16-year-olds, are they allowed to drink when accompanied by parents and buying a meal, so one drink? In the UK, that is how things are. In the US, it's probably very different. So you're going to have a very good understanding of the laws. Maybe there's a challenge 25 policy, anything like that, you're going to have researched. And if you've got specialist knowledge around wine, this is a great time to talk about it. If you know all the different grapes, and you know sweetness and sourness, and you know the champagne ratings, like Brut, for example, talk about all that knowledge that you have. Then when you're answering the question, you're going to start by talking about your knowledge. So you know how to make all of these drinks, you know what the laws are, and you know about wine. Get those ideas in for the first 2 points. And then lastly, talk about your experience. So how many years have you worked in the industry? Have you worked in a bar before? And also remember that, experience can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be selling alcohol in a restaurant. It could be in a bar. It could be in a supermarket. Anywhere that alcohol is involved, where you are the person that is taking the payment for it or serving the drinks, is fine. Absolutely any location is fine. Experience can be anywhere. Don't worry about where it is. So, as a bonus, I've got some great questions that you can ask. So I've planned some questions that are really good to ask in your interview. So one question is, what sets your restaurant apart from the competition? And if you're applying to an independent restaurant, the restaurant owners are really interested in answering this question because this is part of their obsession. Also asking, what is your vision for the restaurant, is a really great question to ask at independent venues, because usually owners are really passionate about the vision that they have for the restaurant, and they will go on and on and on about it. And they just love that question. What would you say is the best thing about working here? Is a really good question. It gives you a bit of information about whether you actually want to work here. If the person pauses and struggles to answer the question, that's a big red flag, and maybe you want to work somewhere else. You can always ask, what would you say an outstanding waiter or waitress looks like? That's a great opportunity for them to tell you exactly what they're looking for, and you to remind them that you are actually exactly what they need. And lastly, you're going to make sure that you definitely ask one question that is based on something that's come up in the interview. So they've mentioned something earlier, take a mental note and say, at the end of the interview, I'm going to make sure that I ask about that. And if you do that, it shows that you're listening, it shows you're engaging in a two-way conversation, and they're going to take you a bit more seriously. So hopefully this video has been very helpful to you and you're well prepared for your waiter or waitress interview. Thank you very much for watching.